Today I have some points to make about wampum belts. The first is in regards to their primary function. You will often hear people describe them in terms of their potential utility as mnemonic devices. While this is undoubtedly a part of their function, perhaps even a significant part of their function, I do not believe it is the primary function. My reason being that wampum belts impose severe limitations on any potential use as a mnemonic device. I would like to propose that if all people wanted was a memory aid, they would probably have been writing pictographs on deerskin, which they did. Wampum belts are extremely time-consuming to make. You're limited to extremely low-resolution pixel art images. Increasing the resolution exponentially increases the production time. You've only got 2 colors to work with, and the raw materials need to be imported. Compare this to painting or drawing. You can do it a lot faster, you're a lot less limited in terms of your symbols, your shapes, your resolution, your colors. When you take all of that into consideration, wampum seems like a fairly lousy mnemonic device. Thus, I would like to propose that mnemonics were not their primary goal. To demonstrate what I mean, let's take a look at some original belts. This is the Hiawatha belt, the symbol of the Confederacy. It originally contained 7,296 beads. If the primary goal of the manufacturer was to display 4 squares and a tree, this belt would contain over 7,000 unnecessary beads. You can convey much the same image, though in much less grand scale, using a patch only 7 beads wide by 40 beads long. This is the 2-row. Strictly speaking, it's more than twice as wide as it needs to be and about 4 times as long as it needs to be, assuming the primary goal was conveying the metaphor. This is the dish with 1 spoon. It's quite a small belt, only coming in at a little over 1,000 beads, but again, it's grossly overbuilt if all you're trying to do is convey a metaphor. There's about 1,000 white beads on either side of the image, which are not necessary. So, why would people go to all that extra effort? I'd like to propose an alternative primary purpose for wampum belts, namely that rather than being a record of words, a task at which they are suboptimal, their role is instead to serve as a clear, unambiguous display of conscious, heartfelt, and deliberate commitment. In this role, their primary limitation, that being the production time, turns into their greatest strength. Let's say that you and your neighbor are locked in a long and bitter feud. This goes on for some time until eventually the women of the village get annoyed and say, "Look, knock it off. Smarten up or I'll smack you in the teeth." So the leaders of the 2 villages, they get together and they talk it through and they try to resolve all of their differences. Then eventually somebody says, "Wait, how can we trust you to hold up your end of the agreement? You've tricked us before in this dispute, so maybe you're just trying to lie so that you can get the advantage. How do you prove that you're acting in good faith in a situation like this? Well, what if you give the other party something that took a year to produce? Here is a belt that the village came together to make. It contains many thousands of beads, far too much for one individual to produce. Here is a year of life crystallized into something beautiful. And you take it and you present it to the other party and say, "This is how much I value our agreement." Returning to the Hiawatha belt, its inefficiency is not a side effect, it's the primary function. We value this piece so much that we are all going to come together and contribute a man-year of labor just to make a symbol of how much we value this piece. In this interpretation, the image exists not as a record of words, but as a means of tying the pledge and the words together. If we return to the dish with 1 spoon and to the 2-row, they aren't merely conveying the metaphor of their title. What they're also saying is, "I value your friendship this much." We could have conveyed this image with 100 beads, but we value your friendship far more than that. We value your friendship so much that we are prepared to sacrifice thousands of hours of work to symbolize it. This, I believe, is the primary function of wampum belts, not so much a record of words as a pledge of commitment. I have a second point to make about wampum belts, namely that they were not just reserved for international diplomacy. They were also tools for domestic relations. One of their roles had to do with marriage. They function very much like wedding and engagement rings. Here again, they serve as a pledge of commitment. A man gets engaged to a woman, he presents her with a wampum belt. What the man is basically saying is, "Look, I'm not going to leave you at the altar. I spent 1,000 hours making this stupid thing." They could also be given as gifts to warm, skeptical parents. Put in some great show of effort to demonstrate that 1, you're not a useless layabout, and 2, you're not a rake. It was partially for this reason that beading did not fall under the usual gendered division of labor. It means a lot more to say, "I made this for you," than it is to say, "My mom made this for you." The size of the belt would also say something here. 1,000 beads is about the limit of what it's feasible for one person to do. So if you got significantly more than that, it means you had quite a bit of help. This would be another good sign because it would show that your family likes you enough to pitch in and that they support the union. Another possible utility was as an apology. You break the law, you hurt somebody, and you can't make it better. You get exiled from the village for a year. The year passes, you return home, and you present the injured party with the belt you made in the interim. You go up and you say, "Look, I know I did wrong, and I know I can't make it better, but here is a year of my life. This is how sorry I am." And the injured party, they look at it and they think, okay, this guy's a jerk, but he's clearly willing to work to try and make things right. And so on down the line. The third point I want to make is that the word wampum belt does not reflect the diversity of applications. They could be sashes, belts, chokers, necklaces, garters, bracelets, collars, and trim. One common application was as a shoulder strap for a bag. In the modern day, we're most familiar with the big, important belts, the ones people put a lot of effort into preserving. But underneath the big, important belts with their historical significance, there were countless ordinary belts which led ordinary lives and were put to ordinary uses.